Bonjour, my name is Austin, and I'm here to tell you about a book. That book being Temporary by Hilary Leichtner. I hope. I'd hate to pronounce that name wrong. Leichtner sounds right, so I'm gonna go with that. To avoid spoilers, I'll be general with this book at first, general feelings and all that, and then at the end, I'll go over the specifics, because I got some questions about what the fuck was going on in here. This novel follows a nameless woman who's on a mission to gain a permanent job by doing temp work for a temp agency who has promised her a permanent job sometime in the indeterminate future. She does do a bunch of temp work. That's basically the point of the novel, is following her. She does her temp jobs that are rather insane, as the blurb suggests. However, the blurb is a liar, a cheater, a whore. Because the blurb would have you believe it's a fun, quirky romp that has a little bit of corporate ass kissing. So when it's such a powerful anti-capitalist, woman rage novel that wants to just keep gut punching you, and why didn't you put it at the back? Because I would have read this so much sooner if I knew that's what I was getting. But I didn't. Pick up the work. Oh, it's kind of, Coffee House Press. The only not one-dimensional character in this is technically the main character. But that's kind of the point. Well, point is like everything's temporary to her. You know, she's not supposed to get attached because she's been told her entire life she's a temp worker, right? So it sort of really strengthens the point of the novel is that she's the only one, because she's the only one who can be with her the whole time. That doesn't mean there aren't characters who aren't there throughout the whole novel, but once again, because she's just going on all these crazy temp jobs, it's sort of hard to develop any other character. So be warned, the main character, so interesting to read, just sort of about her mental state and then like the deterioration of it, if you will, going from this nothing bothers her, everything's fine, life is great, slowly realizing that this mentality is not healthy for her and that everyone around her sees her the same way because she's never let anyone get close. And so it's realizing that she needs to make a change. So as I mentioned, this book is very anti-capitalist. It's at first it sort of seems like, oh yeah, we're going for this. Woo, work hard and life pays off. It's even what it says at the end, sort of, or in the blurb. This riveting quest, ellipses, will resonate with anyone who's ever done their best at work, even when the work is only temporary. Like, that sounds like some corporate bullshit that they put together. Like, let's be real. But that's not really what it's about. Well, I guess it doesn't say it's, like, being positive about it. It's about people who have done. But it's like, I don't know if I agree. I guess it depends on the person. It's about how much effort we put into work and how much we get back in return. She puts all her life on hold for temp jobs. She gives up everything to be someone she isn't. She's forced, or tried to force, to go against morals, to go against such horror. She's forced to commit atrocities. I don't want to get too much into it, but you can guess just by the back whether it's doing that, assisting an assassin. I think you can guess what's happening in that piece of the book. So a large part of the book is her figuring out how far she's willing to go for her temp work until it comes to a point where she doesn't really have a choice. She kind of has to, or else she can't live. And then as the work goes on, the work becomes so much more tragic. It's horrifying. I'd also like to point out that this book does, kind of lightly, but also does talk a bit about child labor and sort of the unfairness of taking away someone's childhood just so that they can work. Just so that they can work for a future that isn't guaranteed for them. They're working towards temporariness. That sounded so much better in my head. I was getting somewhere, I swear. But, because the main character, of course, like, this comes up relatively, okay, maybe a little farther than I thought, but it does talk a bit about child labor and sort of the unfairness of that. The setting of this book is sort of something that confused me, because it's a really small and compact world until it's not. Because almost all the jobs that happen in the present happen within one city. But then that's apparently across a whole ocean from the business at the beginning. And then we have no idea where this childhood house of hers is. But then every time something happens, it's sort of brought back to this city sort of at the beginning. And it's just like, what? And then, like, why did we... Like, I kind of get why we stayed in the same place, is to get these send-offs to characters and to see more of them, because otherwise they would have went off on kind of a weird, not the weirdest, no, but the way they ended off in the book is probably better than if they didn't include that, but it still felt weird and sort of unrealized, I guess, as I'm such a big fan of world building within my books. Huge fantasy fan. You'll find that most of this is fantasy or sci-fi. Technically this is fantasy, but it's like, well, it's my definition of magical realism, which seems to always end up being different than others. I do not have time to get into the defining of fantasy subgenres, because that always gets messy. So the setting's just really confusing me throughout this novel. It sort of feels like she just put things where she needed them to be put instead of thinking of it, which I guess isn't too bad for a lit fic and for one where nothing's sort of focused on, you know, everything's sort of a blur, everything's temporary. You know, like, time in this, we never, I guess there's very little about how much time passes, and usually when there is, it's like a day or a couple hours. We have no idea how much time passes from the beginning to the end. All we have is the one scene that is devastating, and I will get into the spoiler section because it's closest to making me cry from the novel. I didn't cry, but that's, once again, some of the spoilers, because it had nothing to do with the novels, because I was, like, hopped up on energy drinks, so... Alright, moving on to the spoilers, because I'm so bad at not spoiling anything. I feel like I've already told this whole novel out, and I haven't even gotten to this section yet. So, first off, why were they dropping bombs? Like, this is one of the aspects I was talking about, because what do you mean that they were just dropping bombs? Because we haven't heard these bombs until she got onto the blip, or blimp, or whatever the fuck it's called. Like, wouldn't we have heard or seen the bombs? Because everyone else knows that the bombs are happening. Like, we find out when she gets on the ship at the very end and talks to Darla, well, I guess Darla didn't know. It was a metaphor, but like, it's just like, really? First off, why are we dropping bombs just everywhere? Just why not? But also, I'm just so confused how she didn't know this was happening, how no one knew the bombs were getting dropped, even though they were happening very, like, they were happening in this book. Like, they were dropping a lot on the short time she was in the blimp. So that's one of the aspects that sort of confuses me. That I guess there's sort of this, like, how far? And also, yeah, but I get it sort of creates this uncertainty as to what is happening, but I just wish that was a bit clearer if that was what she was going for, or it was more realized if it wasn't. And then what else did we talk about? There's so much to talk about. I know this one shouldn't have hurt me the most, but I think one of the scenes that hurt me, probably not the most, it was probably when the boy found her pirate stuff. But I think the scene that hurt me the second most was when the boyfriends are like, yeah, we're marrying Farron. Huh? Out of nowhere. Devastating. And I'm like, oh my god. Right? But I'm like, it didn't really seem like she cared. So I was like, okay, but I kind of get it. They weren't really getting that from a relationship. And then her favorite boyfriend's like, I bet she doesn't even know her name. And then she goes to the bar and she's like, I miss I don't remember the names, like Juan and David. And I'm like, she remembered their names. Oh my god. And that hurt because it showed she cared. She didn't want to show the audience that she cared. She never said their names because that would be attaching herself to them. But she knew them because she was always attached to them. She always loved them. I did not need that in my life. Devastating. More authors need to do things with names. I know that most authors do, but like, be a bit more creative. Like Jekyll and Hyde. Sorry, that's my favorite classic. It's right there. You can't really tell, but like I Kill and Hide. But I love when they do something around the use of names. Who has a name? Whose name? Like, you know what I mean? Another one of my favorite books of all time. It's not that book. It's Six Gun Snow White. Thank you, by Catherine Valenti, and that one's great because the characters' names are how close they are in relationship to the main character. You know, her father and her stepmother, it's Mr. H, and I don't remember the stepmother's name, but it's nothing. And then the people who work at her house, they have names, or they have last names, because presumably she's not allowed to call them by their first names, but she knows their full name, or their first name, and she knows her mother's name. And then she meets the women, and she knows their names, because she's close to them. But then we have Dear Boy. We never learn his name. Was he ever given a name? Probably not. I mean, his mother's really cruel. So, I really wish books did more with names. I feel like there's so much potential there with about whose name we know and why. And that book, or this book, I think does that really well because we know so few names. Only the people that, because other than Farron, the only names she knows are her employers, I guess I should say, employers and peers, because she takes her temp work so seriously. So I think that really got me. And then, as I said, the scene where the boy is, I should say the man, he comes up to her and he's like, what's this? And this scene is really where we focus on the time that has passed, where she's like, or does he have a mustache? Is that fuzz? I don't remember being able to drive, and all of a sudden, you realize that we've never seen time pass. We never knew what was happening, and I know that technically that was also highlighted with the boyfriends, where the boyfriend's like, do you know how long you've been gone? And then there's no reply. She doesn't say anything. because to her this is all temporary. I'm gonna just keep fucking saying that. It's devastating the way we let time slip by, especially in relation to work. We let work consume us until nothing's left. I don't know if that was the point of the novel, if the novel wanted to take an anti-capitalist approach, but if you're writing about work, I'm gonna see all the criticisms you're doing, girl, because that's my favorite fucking shit to consume. I feel like there's some other things I wanted to talk about. The ending is so fucking real. What do you mean? She just walks to the building. She sees a sign for it, and she's like, I know what I gotta do. And she just opens up a random hole and finds the inheritance. Like, it's overshadowed by the reveal that it's her father, which I thought, okay, not too hinted at, but also not, completely out of the blue. Like, okay, she never really met the tallest boyfriend until her mother died. So it makes sense why she wouldn't recognize him, and it kind of makes sense, like, is that why she never met him? It's because he was her father, and so he wasn't supposed to be a temporary presence, or a full-time presence, because mother, obviously. Her great-grandmother was a lesbian. Ally. She also just fully sleeps with a woman, so I don't know why I'm acting like that's a great thing, but she just kind of shows up and gets the inheritance, and I'm like, why? Why? Why did we do that? There should have been an extra page or two where at least the guy comes from the crystals or whatever, the ashes, and he's like, I think you know. But I just felt, it sort of felt like it came out of nowhere, and I just wanted to get to the conclusion, which I guess it makes sense, but like, there could have just been a little more work put into finding out why. I wanted to know how she realized all this. And she's like, I walked in, I didn't need a key card. I knew I wouldn't. Okay, but why? Did this just occur to you? Because it didn't occur to her that that was her father until she read the inheritance note. So I just wanted something from that, I guess. And I don't remember, there's another really sad part. Might have been the Anna thing, like when she was filming for a ghost. Oh my god, that was insane. And she was a fucking child. Her mother sucks. I know she was like kind of good, but no, I'm considering. Okay, Carl, first off, definitely a hottie. Would. Secondly, everything about that, when she didn't murder Pearl, and then he finds Pearl, and then he's like, okay, we found your assignment. Kill Pearl. Insane. And then that was probably the boy's mom. Oh my god. I don't know. It wasn't necessarily the boy's mom, but we don't know who it was. I feel like it'd be so much better if it was Pearl. But it probably wasn't, because he said she was kidnapped and she was previously a pirate, so. And then, but it's like, yeah. And then Laurette killing her and then framing Carl. She was an icon. Also, the guy who's obsessed with barnacle dicks, me. That's me. He's so real for that. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to go over and really talk about. Because the ending was nice. I mean, incredibly depressing. Being left alone in the world, your job, your permanent job now, just to be search for life. That hurt. And then when the exit interview, and she's like, are you saying these questions to yourself? Yes. Okay, girl. Go crazy. Go insane. And of course the story with the first temp, and then that in conjunction to like the end with the last temp. was really interesting. And then it definitely brings more questions about the mortality of these characters, but I know it's lit fic, so I'm not supposed to ask these questions. It's this just coming from a hardcore fantasy reader who likes hard magic and lots of world building. That's my bad. It's just me wanting more from something that isn't supposed to give more. It's lit fic. It's my definition of magical realism. It's not supposed to do that. It's not supposed to give me all the information, because then that would take away from the theme and the message, and I get that. It's just something that's difficult for me. So I give this book 5 stars, but that doesn't mean anything, because I give every book 5 stars. You go on my Goodreads, and genuinely everything other than like 20 books, and I've read over 100, there's like 20 of them that are 4 stars and under. Everything else is 5 stars, and it's like, oh. Yeah. So the book was really good. Definitely good for lit fic. Definitely good for anti-capitalist media. Definitely on my list. But it didn't make my top 10. To be fair, that's a lot of work. But it was very good. I definitely think this changed some of my perception on what lit fic can be, because I tend to avoid it for a lot of the reasons, as I said. I'm just, as a hardcore fantasy and sci-fi reader, I know I've moved towards nonfiction as of late, but I'm really getting back into it, and so it's like, but just even ignoring that, seeing those elements in here, the lit fic elements, were so well done, I think. I felt like the way they put the messages and the big and little scenes that they used to portray those messages were really, really well done. Yeah, I think they could have done a little more, but for what we got, I think is really good, and I think the author did really good, and I shouldn't say I will, but I hope to check out some of her future works. I think this was brilliant, and I really want to see what else she can do with other themes and other settings. So, yeah, that's my humble opinions on the book, Temporary. I'm not putting it up there. This is not my book. It's a library book. Au revoir. Ooh, I kind of ate with that.